MIDDLEKAUFF! Hey!
This is from Robert. He said, underrated aspect, this was a couple days ago, underrated aspect of the Niners' win in Green Bay, the draft position got worse. The first rounder they traded for Lance is now essentially a high second. It's like an extra win from the weekend. And by the way, the second round pick, was it a second they gave up, is now kind of like a third. So
who'd they give a second?
I'm sorry, a third. They gave up a third.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a fourth. Pretty good. Yeah, I would say so. There was a point in time where you thought you were sending the Dolphins like the 12th overall pick, which they were trending towards having the 10th or 11th or 12th pick again.
Well, really, is there a game that represents two teams that have less high-end draft capital in the foreseeable future?
Yeah.
And
built differently, but arrived kind of at the same place.
Yeah, and did it for one went for a rookie quarterback, the other one for an established veteran. But when you look, you are guaranteed, if the Niners were to lose this game, they have the worst record of the four teams remaining. Just do the math. 29, 30, 31, 32. Their pick would be 29. If I told you at the beginning of the season, just even if you didn't have Trey Lance or whatever, would you trade pick 29 to be the next year's 29 to be in the NFC Championship game or AFC Championship game? If you ask all 32 teams, what would they all say?
Yes.
In a fucking heartbeat. So when you make a trade like that, do you know the most devastating part about the Chicago Bears season? Is they had to fire their coach, they had to fire their general manager. They traded 2 first-round picks, right? They trade up, they use the pick on Justin Fields. They have to trade next year's one to get Justin Fields as well. Well, do you know what happens? Is the Giants now have pick 7. And whether the draft, like last year's draft was viewed as elite, right? All the non-quarterbacks was Sewell, Parsons, the receivers. It was just dudes everywhere. This is not. But I don't care how crappy or good a draft is at the time. Losing pick 7 sucks. Losing pick 29, John Schneider has been saying it for years. On average, 16 to 18 first-round picks. And maybe they're on the low end, but I would say the high end of optimistic teams would probably be 22. I've seen Andy Reid. They've traded first-round picks for a long period of time for players. You know why? Because you don't feel great about taking a guy at 29, at 30, at 31. To me, the Rams and the 49ers both feel 1,000,000% vindicated on their moves this offseason for this first-round pick. Now, both of them have another first-round pick next year, but it's...
Well,
yeah, to me, it shows you... And listen, I like talking about the draft as much as the next guy. I love texting my buddies in the league about the draft. It can be the whole point of the fucking sport is to win.
Well, here's an example for you. If the Chiefs have traded a first rounder for Joe Mixon 2 years ago, what would people have said?
They're nuts.
But wouldn't they rather have him than Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now?
Oh, you're just saying if they would have picked 32 instead of for Clyde for Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's a unique because you know how people talk about running backs. They would have said they were crazy. But they did kind of with Clyde. Like, why are you taking a running back?
I'm just saying they'd be better today
if
they had him over Clyde. Like, Clyde was just, he's good. He doesn't exactly.
They just kind of liked him. He was riding the LSU train. They just like, sweet, let's just take him.
I liked it. I thought it was a good pick. And he plays. It's not like he doesn't play. He's not a bust.
He's gotten better. He's gotten better.
But you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do.
So, no, it's to support your point. It's a great point. And I think you had to be reassured that watching the Chiefs the other day, if you were Kyle, I think this is not breaking news. We talk about quarterbacks. I don't know. Did you see the NFL sketch of Michael Irvin and Stephen A. Smith from this weekend?
No.
It's like got Molly Quorum is like, is Tom Brady exceptional or very exceptional? And Stephen A's like, he's exceptional. And then he does his thing. And then Michael Irvin's like, I cannot disagree more. He's very exceptional. So my point is Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes have this incredible game, and everyone's rushing to declare what it means. But we all know what it means. They're two of the greatest quarterbacks. They're 25 and 26. They're not going anywhere. They're going to be battling it out for years to come. You want one of those guys, not one of the other types of guys. I said it. Everyone else, we've all said it. Like, if you have one of those guys, it changes everything. Doesn't guarantee you anything, but it changes everything potentially. And if you're Kyle Shanahan, we're not going to get into the Jimmy Garoppolo's future conversation now, but when we talk about Jimmy's future, No, you watch the Bills and the Chiefs. If you don't have one of those guys, all you're doing is trying to get one of those guys. And there's not that many of them. So when we say, like, I don't know, Trey's got some of the tools. Could it be Josh Allen? I mean, I guess he's above the line of guys that could be Josh Allen because he's got a certain skill set, and there's a small number of guys that have that skill set. But from having the skill set to being Josh Allen, there's a long way to go. But at least you're in the game if you have that type of guy. Like, it's not just that they won. It's that we've seen enough of Trey here to go, we don't know what he's going to be, but we know that the guys we're fighting, the Bills, the Chiefs, the guys that have the best shot every year, have that type of guy. Now, it doesn't just have to be physicality, right? Tom's not physically like those guys, but he can carry you. But you just need one of those guys.
So someone mentioned this to me the other day. They said when you look at the pipeline, obviously this year does not possess any Trey Lance skill set guys. You could argue maybe Malik Willis, I think his name is, the dude from Liberty, but I saw someone do this tweet thread of him like throwing picks. He looks fucking terrible. And he plays for definitely probably the best non-Power 5 offensive coach. And Hugh Freeze is, say what you want about him, with the hookers. The guy can coach offense, right? Beat Saban.
I didn't say anything. I didn't want to say anything about him with the hookers.
I mean, he did have some hookers on the road. That was it kind of derailed his career.
If this were the 80s, John.
He also coached the game from remember the
hospital bed.
Hospital bed. But then my guy also mentioned, he's like, well, look at the sweet young guys in college football. Bryce Young doesn't physically look like these guys. He's tiny.
Right.
CJ Stroud is not. He's a smooth pocket kind of thrower. He's not a runner moving around type guy. He does not look like Mahomes and Allen. So the Niners took a swing for the fences. We have no clue it's going to work. It's why this, right? The craziest part about this game is, to me, one of the two teams we're going to get Matt Stafford to play in this game. If he wasn't a Ram, he would have been the Niners, because the Niners would have done 2-1s in Jimmy Garoppolo, right? They would have done the same deal happily for Matt Stafford. We've seen Kyle Shanahan. He'd rather have the veteran guy. That option got taken off the table, so they had to do the Trey Lance thing. But both of them, are validated with the move. And both of them at times, like the Stafford thing wasn't working out. It's like, God damn, if they're one and done in the playoffs, it's going to be a huge kick and dick. At one point in time, we had talked all season long, like, you Band-Aided this thing with Jimmy, you're going to miss the playoffs. That's devastating. Well, somehow, and it all gets back to week 18, you see Sean Payton today was like, I'm rooting for the Rams. The reason we weren't in the playoffs,
Because I thought he said he was rooting for the Bengals.
Well, no, he said, I'm rooting against the Rams because they screwed us out of the playoffs.
He was like, I don't know where the Bengals get who day from. But
So to me, the draft can be really, really, Belichick sometimes got nitpicked over the years. Like, guys, I'm fucking winning 13 games a year. I'm going every year minimum to lose in the Super Bowl. You think I give a shit about whether I got Chase Winovich right or not? It's like, do you know who we make a big deal of the draft? The Dolphins, the Jags, the Lions. The Belichick, you think he loses sleep over missing on Sony Michel? No, he trades that guy 3 years in and moves on. And he gets whatever. What's the guys? He's got Damian Harris and the other sweet little dude. He doesn't even worry about it. It's like, whatever. I missed. Could have had Nick Chubb. Fucking I don't. Whatever. See you in the playoffs.
Yeah. I think with quarterbacks, though, to go back to the point, because I heard
DeAndre something is the guy's name.
Swift?
No, that's the Lions guy. Not Hunter.
Brown, someone with a B?
They got a sweet little running back, though.
With an R.
Ramonde, something like that.
Ramondre
Williamson? Swift?
No.
James?
If I Googled it, I could find it, but
yeah.
I'd
Chat,
rather
blow us.
Stevenson.
Yeah.
Shout out to the chat, our producers. I think quarterbacks are really interesting because you can kind of build any narrative you want, however you want to do it. Like, we're talking about Josh Allen. He's not actually left in the playoffs. Joe Burrow is, right?
Well, Rodgers is getting shit on for losing all these playoff games the last decade, right? Right now.
Yeah, no, totally. But what I mean is you can build any narrative about what type of quarterback you need. Because I heard, like, to this point, I heard DJ and Bucky talking about, like, I think people are going to err more on the side. It used to be about accuracy. People are going to err more on the side of talent.
Like Trey Lance.
Malik, with the Liberty quarterback.
Would you say Trey Lance was that, right?
Yes, but haven't we been doing this forever? Like, here's my example. If you wanted to last weekend, you could have said, look at all these quarterbacks. Josh Allen, JC in Wyoming. If you look at Pat Mahomes, because I looked, Patrick Mahomes' star rating coming out of high school would be 35th in this year's 2022 class, and Josh Allen's star rating would be 126th in this year's recruiting class. Like Joe Burrow, transfer. Jimmy Garoppolo, small school, right? Or you could go Jimmy Garoppolo, second rounder. Josh Allen, first rounder. Patrick Mahomes, first rounder.
Tannehill, first rounder.
Tannehill, first rounder. Joe Burrow, first rounder. Like, I think you can always look at the physicality. The fact is, I believe there are quarterbacks, great quarterbacks are by definition exceptions. I think it's really hard to find patterns with great quarterbacks. I think it's easy to pretend we found a pattern and to build a pattern. I think it's really hard to find patterns that we all pretend like sometimes. I do too. I mean, we all do. Because the great hunt in sports is finding the next great quarterback. But we've seen it time and time again. There is no science to it. And part of it is fit. Part of it is where you go.
I do think the character for 99% of the great ones have been pretty high.
Okay, character. Well, but yes.
There have been some assholes probably too over the years, yes.
But I mean, like to say, well, I need to find Mahomes or Josh Allen, like physically, cool. Well, you're going to be waiting like 5 drafts.
Well, is there any doubt in your mind that after last year on Monday night when Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, I'm pretty sure his numbers were like 27-30 for like 4 touchdowns. It was like the greatest game at the time he'd ever played, and it was unreal to watch. Don't you think when they were discussing Trey Lance and Fields that the Trey Lance, Kyle, and John, the name Josh Allen came up in the meeting?
Yeah, probably.
If you had to bet $1,000, do you think one of the two of them brought up like the Josh Allen?
We need somebody who can do that.
Yeah, that specific experience that Kyle witnessed, and then Kyle said, remember leading up to it, was like, God damn, that kid. He's went out of his way to talk about Josh Allen more than Mahomes, because I do think Mahomes is more of an outlier of he kind of flew under the radar. Josh Allen did not fly under the radar.
No,
Josh Allen was a guy that was heavily nitpicked, and it was like, well, you're either going to bet on it and you're probably going to get fired because you bet on it, or you're just going to hit one of the greatest Babe Ruth level walk-off home runs ever seen. And now Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott are like this.
Well, you're right. That is part of where the Josh Allen
polarizing players, I'd say, in the history of the draft since we've been talking. Because his talent was so crazy, but his tape was so terrible. And I do think that's your right to bring that up. Like, that is part of where the Trey Lance, Josh Allen conversation comes from. It's not just, physically, look at Trey, could he be that? It is North Dakota State and Wyoming, and how do we project this? Because who did he play against? But the second you do that, you're like, well, Drew Brees isn't good enough, and Tom Brady's not, physically they don't match up with this type of player. Mac Jones isn't good enough. Boom, he's been good.
But I would. This is why you take Drew Brees in the second round and Trey Lance in the first round, right? You don't take Mac Jones generally in the first round and try to make him into Tom Brady or to Drew Brees.
Well, I'm saying I felt
my point is they're all exceptions is what I'm saying. Mac could be an exception. Brady's an exception. Brees is an exception. But Mahomes and Josh Allen are exceptions too. They're all exceptions. Greatness is exceptional. Very exceptional, in the words of fake Michael Irvin on SNL. Very exceptional.
Yeah, I won't disagree. There is a level. Here's the one thing with the quarterbacks, and I remember an underrated part, somewhat missed these days, but I don't miss like having a dog in the fight that if you lose, it's miserable in the office. You end up, the conversations you have in the NFL, and same when I was at Fresno State, are just the highest level of like fan conversations. You're just debating players and debating assistant coaches and debating stuff with, it happened to be like with guys like Louis Riddick and Brett Veach, but you're having and Howie and having these conversations about, is this guy good enough? Is this guy not? No different than the conversations we have or the fans have over a beer. You just potentially may have the opportunity to like meet that player and then draft that player. But the thing that you never know with the quarterbacks, or you do, like if you're on the team, is a lot of it's out of their control. Like Peyton Manning, And I think if you and I were sitting there with beers, he's like, I benefit a lot. I went to a team that had Bill Polian. We hired Tony Dungy a couple years later, and they had Marvin Harrison already on the team. Right? Like, as a quarterback, who surrounds you really matters. And part of Trey Lance, if he starts next year, which he probably will, is he's going to benefit a lot from the opportunity to have fucking star players at skill positions around him. Like, that's the one thing with Trevor Lawrence is, like, who's he really playing with? Same thing with Zach Wilson. Hell, same thing. Justin Fields' team sucks.
Think about Josh Allen in his developmental years. Really good defenses. They traded for one of the best receivers in the NFL.
They get Knox. They sign Cole Beasley, who's a really good slot receiver.
Yep.
They
care about running backs there.
It feels like I'm not going to say they hit a home run, but Gabriel Davis got something to him, right? Drafted that guy in the 4th round.
Yeah.
Who just looked like a big body guy, Feels like they did a pretty good job getting big body guys around him beside Cole Beasley. Because I remember when they signed Cole Beasley, I'm like, Josh Allen's not the most accurate guy. You want a little midget slot receiver? But then he got accurate, and when you watch the Bills, like, Cole Beasley's a big part of their offense, right?
Yeah, you just need the perfect piece of clay that develops at a rate that most quarterbacks don't.
But again, like Trey Lance is going to benefit from being around Kyle and Welker, and hopefully McDaniel stays. Josh Allen got to go with a very calming presence in Sean and clearly a really good offensive coordinator who was people I saw were shitting on Dayball, like, look back at he's failed everywhere. Sometimes he failed and he's learned from it. Now he's figured it out and now he's good. And so once Josh Allen, maybe they just got together at the perfect time. There isn't timing in life. Like, how'd you meet Alyssa? Didn't you have a class with her? Like, things are out of our control. Whether you're a quarterback, whether you're a fucking salesman, whether you're trying to meet your wife, like, there are parts of life that Tom Brady, you cannot dispute, benefited dramatically from getting drafted in the 6th round and ending up around Bill Belichick and just that team. If he had ended up, when you're a 6th round pick, you literally can end up on any of the other 31 teams.
I mean, Polian had a 1st round grade on him.
But like, what if he would have ended up in the Bengals? What if he would have ended up in the Jags? Like, Aaron
Rodgers on the Browns.
The age-old question is, and this great part of like hypothetical conversations, bullshit with your buddies is you never truly know. Because you could argue, like, do you believe that Patrick Mahomes could have gone to any 32 teams and would have become a great player? Not as quickly, but would have become a great player. Or more, let's use him, not Josh Allen.
I think he would have become a great player in most situations. Maybe not. He would have become at minimum a really good player. Yes, I do believe that. But I think he gets to be his best with Andy Reid.
I would tend to want to agree with you, but I think we have a lot of, most people listening, you and I, have never been to these crazy, shitty organizations, but we've all heard enough players talk about it and be like, God, that was fucking crazy. And it can really destroy you. Now, Alex was nowhere near as talented as Patrick, but that thing for 4 or 5 years, I don't care who you are, it's really hard to overcome that. Like, I think it's fair to say Josh Allen probably, with the work he needed, could not have overcome a Lions, a Jags. It would have killed him, right? Where Patrick was just more talented, naturally, immediately coming into the league. But I don't know, man. It's maybe their character, they're mentally tough enough. You'd say Patrick comes from a pro background. Maybe he just would have had the wiring.
I think Alex, you don't normally get to see a guy get all the way through it and come out on the other side. I think that's what's so remarkable about Alex Smith's career, right? Is that I do think Alex, in a stable situation, he wouldn't have been, in the end, like, better than what he ultimately was, but he would have been that guy a lot earlier and would have put together, just a career with more stuff in it. And I think it's one of the great football miracles that Alex Smith turned into the Alex Smith we got at the end. Because 999,000 out of a million guys do not get through all of that. And maybe Alex would tell you if he was here right now, it's part of how he became that guy. But I think Alex could have been that guy. Like, he's a solid enough guy. He didn't need to go through all of that to become the quarterback he became.
Now, the one thing you would say is who values you when you're on another team, regardless of what happens, speaks to you. Andy Reid wanted to sign him the year Harbaugh came as a backup. We were going to pay him $5 million to be Michael Vick's backup. Andy Reid loved him. Loved him. Obviously ended up getting him. still to this day loves him, goes out of his way. When they had the Patrick Mahomes press conference, they talked immediately about Alex Smith. So I think Matt Stafford is a good example of that. Matt Stafford was available this offseason. 2 guys were willing to throw the farm at him were Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. So you could argue who likes you. You know, sometimes these polarizing players that are like talented come available. It's like, who really wants you? You know, and some of them go to the shitty teams. But some of them, like you see, the Honey Badger is a good example. Every time he became available, like all the sweet teams and coaches want him, right?
Yeah.
And now
is he a Steeler next?
Yeah, I mean, he had a good career from the jump, so maybe that's not the perfect example.
No, I think it's a pretty good example.
I think sometimes just
Coaches
with quarterbacks, you can
he's
just
a quarterback
get
of a
derailed.
defense.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, I just think you can get in these shitty situations. Like, there isn't
Somebody else calls the plays for you, John.
I think there's a chance that Trevor Lawrence's career is just a disaster, and it might not be totally his fault. But he'll get, like, it'll be like, oh, Trevor Lawrence was a bust.
I do think one thing with him is, like, let's say he ends up in the position Darnold is in. Like, Darnold physically has limitations that Trevor Lawrence is pretty physically unique.
People would be all over him.
Yeah, and I think he'd go to the right place and just have, like, maybe it would never be great, but he wouldn't just, like, end up out of football.
Well, if Trevor Lawrence was on the open market right now, what would Howie Roseman do to trade for him? 3 1s and a 2 2s?
I mean, he would not. I don't think his stock in his eyes would have dropped at all.
Not at all.